invite Mr. Tata to join us here on the stage. Maybe use a handle mic or yeah, wherever.
Okay. Thanks. Oh my God, these chairs are...
We wanted to capture moments where you're unguarded. So that was the idea behind the chairs. But, you know, we are, how should I say, we are very parochial on certain things. So much of the furniture you see here is from Urban Ladder. And we are investors in the company. So how wonderful these chairs are, Mr. Tata. You know, since the time that we announced that Mr. Tata is coming to K-Start launch, I've just been getting numerous requests, phone calls to be in this space. And some of the things have been, meeting Mr. Tata has been my biggest dream. Please, please allow me to come to the event and so on. Just very heartwarming, touching notes. And, you know, we are flattered that they want to come here at all, whether it's for the space, whether it's for K-Start, or whether it is to have their moment with Mr. Tata. And I have to share with all of you that he's also one of my big heroes and inspiration for many years, predating the opportunity to meet him and get to know him a bit. So it's my great pleasure, sir, to welcome you here. And one of the first questions, or one of the first questions I want to make is, you know, every time I've met you or been with you, I go away profoundly touched by the graciousness, how grounded you are, and yet, you know, how inspiring you are to people in, with every action and every conversation that you have with them. And how did you get to be that way? What makes you so?
I guess you have to ask my mother.
And what would she say?
I would, she probably tell you to talk to my father.
But you have had years to reflect.
Pardon?
You have had years to reflect on it. What's the legacy that they left behind to make you so?
Oh, I think that's a very difficult thing to answer. It becomes part of your childhood, partly the experiences you've had. I think, to me, the most significant thing that happened in my life was, which many of the people in the room have also experienced, is going off to the US to go to college. From a very sheltered childhood into a big university where you're little more than a number, and suddenly you're thrown into a system of merit solely, no longer an entity. And it's very humbling and very down to earth. And I think that experience, which most of us have had, brings us to a sort of level of equality that is very valuable. I hope the country one day can boast the same kind of, that India can boast the same kind of thing in the years to come.
Sunita, you want to get those pillows? Sunita is curated our space, architect. So.
It's true. Urban Ladder also?
No.
No, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah. Sunita and the team were up all night. I came here after the LP dinner at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and you didn't see the space this way. So a lot of people have been up all night to get this ready, and few small things like pillows need to be done real time. And when you're an entrepreneur doing a product demo, which is what we are doing right now, demonstrating our space, there are glitches. We just have to go along. So, Mr. Tata, we didn't talk about what we were going to talk about today at all, and you didn't ask me what I was going to ask you. So, since I was given no conditions, right, so I'm going to sort of go with the flow that I wanted to ask, okay? I just thought what would be wonderful for me, for many of the founders, is to take the next 30 minutes and capture the journey of an entrepreneur from your point of view, from your years of experience, but having you put yourself in our shoes, as in the entrepreneur's shoes, okay? So if we begin and I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea because I didn't brief him on this, so we'll just go along and figure this out, right? So if we begin at the beginning about ideas and founders, right? If you were 26 years old and decided to jump into the fray of entrepreneurship, how would you go about starting a company?
I think the manner of starting a company is fairly out in the open. You look for funding, you look for somebody that you can inspire or can...
How would you select an idea? What idea would you go after? How would you go after an idea?
I think some of us have ideas all the time, and for me, for example, very often ideas come when I see something not working well, and I think that's probably what most people do. You have enough of a solution orientation to sit down and say, how can this come to work better? Or faster, or less expensively, etc. And then there are those of us who leave those thoughts in our heads, and the others that try to build an enterprise around that. And then you have to go put flesh and blood behind that in terms of funding, in terms of getting a team together, etc.
So how would, and again, there are many paths to heaven, as they say, but, many ways to do a company. But would you be excited by the scope of the opportunity from a market or difficulty of the problem and solving that? What would motivate you?
I think it could be either way. There'd be a moment where you see a market opportunity, which again, probably dwells around a space that's not covered or underserved. And you build an idea around that. And sometimes those ideas don't work, and sometimes they do. I've lived 20, 30 years in the smokestack industries, the traditional industries where you need millions of dollars to do something which is probably a small delta improvement over what you have. But it's the same process. And here what's wonderful about the age we're talking about is the initial money involved is small. And you can put your idea to work much easier than you can't build another steel plant every year. You can't develop a new process for producing cars just overnight, but you can do that in the startup community that exists today. You can put an idea into words, either in software or within the design of a chip or design of a system, and you can change the way the world looks at a certain area of the market. And I think that's what's wonderful and invigorating about what there is here. And with humility, I have to say that in the short period of time that I have been involved in this segment, there have been many occasions when I have felt that this couldn't possibly work. And I've seen success happen, and I know that I'm wrong, and I swallow my thoughts. And each time I realize that I'm on a learning curve of seeing what young, intelligent people can do, with one very important addition, and that's technology development around them that they can use and employ and apply to what they're trying to do. If I just go on, the advent of the smartphone, if you look at the impact that has had on the various startups that exist, the opportunities that exist, and the ability to make those ideas work. If you didn't have the smartphone, many of them would go away. And so that's just an example of how technology today, or imaging technology, or just computing power as a background to making your idea work, helps you create enterprises today which you couldn't possibly do 20, 30 years ago. And that's just hedging that if you want me to go back to when I was 24 years old, it would not be possible to be as prolific as one is today.
True, but you're a 26-year-old today, so putting yourself into the 26-year-old today, which, by the way, you're doing every day with all the encouragement to entrepreneurs and personal investments you're doing. I know how much it means to each one of them when you say, yes, I believe in your idea and I lend you my support. And but I also think you answered our question on what makes you inspiring and gracious. One part of that is willingness to listen and accept if you are wrong about something in your consideration, and we get caught into many human factors that don't always allow us to do that, and it's very inspiring to learn that aspect. But along those lines, what then would be your defining, I'm still on the theme of you as a 26-year-old entrepreneur, right?
Thank you.
So what would be the defining core principles or principle on which you want to found your company? Beyond the idea, beyond the execution, what would be the principle to define your company that's important to you?
Well, I think for me personally, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, partly due to my involvement in philanthropy over a period of time, I'm always additionally excited when an idea can, in its fulfillment, make a difference. That is, either bring prosperity to a part of a community or change the quality or enhance the quality of life of a certain segment. These are additionally exciting, not just making money. The other is where you do something that's a game changer. And that's the most exciting thing if you find your idea is changing the way people live or think or sustain themselves. This is extremely invigorating, to me much more than the returns you have.
And now I actually have a serious question, okay? So now we have the idea, there's a manifesto for the company. What would you look for in an investor? And it's serious because I want to learn, okay? So it's a bit self-serving, that's why it's serious.
See, let me just reflect a bit, jumping to the investor. The investors, in some ways, and I haven't thought this through, but it just struck me as you were talking, is like a talent scout in a music company. You get musical groups who are doing their best to impress that talent scout, and perhaps he can't really put down in numbers what kind of returns this group would get, but he intuitively feels that this group is really going to go. And he can't define why he's saying that, but that he feels that this can really happen, and he mentally conjures up a plan of concerts and recordings and such that he can package this group to be. And I think one looks for an investor that has a similar sort of excitement over what one is trying to do, and is ready to not only risk his money but participate in the journey that has to be taken, using his contacts, using his mentorship, etc., to make this work. Not just plain numbers, because I think there's a lot of intuitive inputs that most of us don't give enough attention to, where we have to put ourselves in the exciting role that the entrepreneur feels, and hopefully come to the conclusion that yes, this is an exciting field.
So that brings follow on to role of capital and growth. One of the big challenges for entrepreneurs today is how much money to raise, how fast should I grow, how much should I focus on sort of capturing market, where do I balance that from needs of profitability and sustainable revenue models. And there are no equations or formulas to say this is the path. And it seems like companies do counterintuitive things and they still succeed. And however, that success doesn't apply all the time to everybody. So growth versus profitability and aggressively raising capital, how do you find equilibrium of those pulling gears?
As you say, there is no single fit that fits all. It's very difficult in these last 2-3 years. Companies that I've looked at have grown at rates that I couldn't possibly have believed could happen. And the next thing is, can those growth rates be sustained? Because you can have high burn rates initially, and they taper off and become albatrosses around your neck. So that's something that's at a rate and pace that I'm not familiar with. It's exceedingly high for someone coming from the smokestack and conventional industries. But again, one has to be humbled, because there are some companies that do this and sustain this and continue to be innovative, and there are others that fall by the wayside, but they burn out much faster than they could. So I can't make a comment on that. Again, it's intuition in terms of how you think it gets implemented, and a close monitoring of what's happening.
So going on then, today all over the world, we are CEOs focus on building personal brands, and sometimes it's hard to separate the brand and the company. Maybe Richard Branson started it all, I don't know. He's the first original brand, at least I knew, from a CEO who drives it so hard, and the company and the person cannot be separated. And how important do you think it is for a startup CEO to focus on creating a personal brand inseparable from the company? Is that a detraction? Is that additive? Is that personal vanity?
It's very difficult to decide what it is. I think
Well, what would you do?
I'm a very shy person, and you're giving me a lot of visibility. So I wouldn't want to build my brand. I would find that difficult to do. But I think a brand has to be built. If it's a corporate brand, it's just the same thing. There's some people who inevitably leave their personal brand on a company, and it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. And I can't make a comment that's more specific than that.
That's good comment. This is all about your journey as a 26-year-old entrepreneur, remember? So you have built large institutions, inherited legacy that you have heightened and have left behind a legacy of institutions that everyone is impacted in one way or the other and look up to. But as a young entrepreneur then, when you think ahead in terms of building long-term institution versus selling when there is a great offer on the table, and again, I know that there is no right answer, but how would you approach thinking through that? When to sell, when to focus on building that legacy?
Building the legacy that you would sell, or?
No, you have an offer. Somebody wants your company. Somebody is going to buy. We have Kunal Shah here, I think. He sold this company for $500 million, which was a great choice he made. And then somebody else may or may not have made that choice and say, I want to build my company into a 50-year-old institution. I want to build the next IBM, although I don't think you start with that. I want to build a 100-year institution. But nonetheless, every entrepreneur faces this moment, and Mukesh is here. He sold to Flipkart and is continuing to build his brand through Flipkart. Every entrepreneur faces that journey. Should I sell my company? Should I continue to build it? What would be some framework, if any, through which they should think about that? Is it just around value for shareholders? Is it future risk? Is it how much of what you want to do should factor into that? And you know?
Well, the only way I can address what you're saying is to give you my living example, if you might. Mm-hmm. When I took over the chairmanship of the Tata Group, the media was rife with statements of Tata's have 80 companies, there's no focus, what are your core businesses, etc. And so, driven in part by that, in part by reality, I started to put together a plan of rationalizing the group into a smaller number of businesses, which meant getting rid of some of the businesses that didn't make sense. Amongst those businesses that seemed to stand alone and was not part of what I thought Tata stood for was our toiletries business. Tata Oil Mills, as it was called, Tomco. And Tomco was the company that had a rival, which was Unilever's, exceedingly established company, which was the market leader, and we were maybe a 25% market share company in the same business. And I negotiated what I thought was a very dignified sale to Unilever's, which gave the shareholders a very good stock to hold, the Unilever stock. We had a standstill on getting rid of any employee for 3 years, and distributors the same. So I thought I had done a terrific thing. But my God, the next day, the media descended on me, the stock market descended on us, I was the new guy that had come along just to make change for the sake of change. Employees were second generation, third generation employees. I'd let them down. And with that, very quietly, my rationalization plan disappeared. Nobody really suffered from that plan, but my self-confidence in being able to do this disappeared. So I think there's no easy way. Some cases it's looked at positively, and in some cases the heavens descend on you in a not so pleasant manner.
So we serve many constituents, and getting them all right is a big balancing act, especially when you are 26 and you have all these investors who have ideas of their own, and that's part of the journey.
It's also, maturity has a lot to do with it. You know better that it's not as easy to do things, that you have to communicate what you want to do. And I think when you're young, you take a lot more for granted than you do when you get up in the age.
I can relate to the communication part, sitting in many board meetings, and that brings me to one of the other questions. Any thoughts on how young companies should constitute their boards and their advisors beyond obviously just investors who give them money and hence have an obligatory board seat? Is that important in the journey of the company, especially when they're small? Any thoughts and advice on that?
No, but what I can say is that successful companies go through great pains to communicate with all their stakeholders, not just their board of directors, but their stakeholders. Nobody likes to wake up to a surprise. And some company CEOs don't believe in, they consider communication to be giving away a part of the company in terms of surprise, in terms of competitiveness, etc. But I think an active system of communication to all stockholders and stakeholders is a great plus, which successful CEOs do very well. And I think it's very much a key to how the world sees you, is how you communicate yourself to the world.
Yeah, lessons in communication are not taught in engineering school, I know that. So you have to learn it the hard way. And I don't know, I haven't looked up if there is a Coursera course for that or not. Maybe there is. But you already told us that you're a shy person, but I have to ask you this question. You have a company, you have an idea, all of that has worked fantastic. You have a very, very successful startup. So how do you celebrate? How do you party?
How do you party?
Yeah, we don't know that part of you, so. Zia might know, she's laughing. So.
So I think the people in this room know better than I do in both how to party and how to celebrate.
But you must celebrate, so tell us one of those moments where, a moment that you cherished from a business perspective, and what's memorable about that?
Oh, there have fortunately been several such things. There have also been several failures that.
But we won't talk about that today. Today is a very special day.
Today's
so
a positive day.
So there is no failure, there's only success. So.
Well, maybe the one moment that I had, which would be my moment in the sun, was the launching of the Nano, looking at the positive part of it.
Okay.
Many of you know that I used to spend my time in boring board meetings making caricatures of my fellow directors. and some of my sketches have been stolen from me and blackmail threatened and so on. And the Nano had its genesis at such a board meeting.
Okay. It resembled a board member?
No, I left him out of the picture, but it was actually it was in Bangalore that it started. Driving behind a scooter that had 4 or 5 people on it, on a day that it started to drizzle and the roads were slippery, and we saw an accident. Somebody flipped over and the family sort of lying on the street. That led me to doodle about how to make a two-wheeler safer, which in turn led to the creation of, or the concept of, an affordable car for a family, and a team to manufacture that car, first design the car at the price level that we had offered, and then using the Auto Expo in Delhi to launch the car. And that launch itself was a tremendous moment of coordinating sort of a holographic display and to bring music into it and so on. And I drove the car onto the stage, which in itself turned out to be almost a disaster because as I drove out, I realized that there were no lights, and where the stage stopped and where the audience started was not so clear. And I was supposed to stop the car on a motorized turnabout that would, when the lights came on, the car would be there. And I was supposed to stop the engine before the music stopped, because what a letdown it would be if this tremendous symphony music stopped and then you heard the put of the car. So in those moments of glory, or rather in those moments of apprehension, there was a period of glory because in the 100 and odd years of the group, there wasn't any one significant project or product that elevated the group in terms of visibility than this one occasion. What happened after that, both in terms of the special lady in West Bengal who made things change, etc., that was the long downhill slide that took place. But that particular moment was a terrific moment for anybody's inner feelings.
I've always wanted to read your biography, and you don't have one. And if you do bring out with one, I hope you will do a book reading and launch here. We have booked the space already. And because I've always, wanted to know the making of Mr. Ratan Tata. So maybe you let me ask you a few questions. And I've been asking questions, I know, but I've been asking very tame questions, I think. So what's the one thing you wish you had known when you were 26?
Why is 26 becoming so important?
So I'll tell you, because 30 is too old to be an entrepreneur today in, just mindset. Well, okay. Remember, I told you I was at this, I've been in 2 campuses in 1 month, Kharagpur and Mumbai. but just kind of generally, okay? So people want to be under 30, not that it's too old any time. How many of you are entrepreneurs here? Oh, geez, okay. I am known to put my foot into my mouth, but okay. And I think that 25, you're not wise enough. So I had to pick a year. So I just picked 26 for no other reason. So there's nothing special about 26, but I just had to pick something. I couldn't say 45.
So how many are at age 26 here?
Okay. But how many of you want to be 26? All right, any age doesn't really matter. But what's the one thing you wish today that you had known, when you were younger? And I think we actually asked this question of all our catalysts to put it on the website. So if you go and look at the website, I think we asked this question. Meeta, how did we frame this for the catalyst?
One thing I wish I'd known when I was 25.
Yeah, so 1 year younger, and there have all been answers. And Zia, what did you say you wanted to know? What? She has forgotten. You put it down on a public website, Zia. So part of that idea was when we reflect back, and I think Anil said, I wish I had known how important India would become when I was 25. What would you do with it? Maybe none of us know, but it's really more about asking for a reflection of just what is it that you didn't know then that you know now. That's sort of really the framework of the question.
Well, very broadly, when one was at that age, I was a young employee in Jamshedpur with ideas. I always used to go to whoever was my boss at that time to ask why we couldn't do something this way or that way. And the answer would be, just wait. Don't be so eager. We know what we're doing. We've been doing this for 30 years. And so just quietly go back and do what you are supposed to do. And so I yearned for an environment where one could be heard and when one had an idea. And maybe I didn't know how to frame my question or my idea to someone. But whatever it was, I think how you communicate is something that you wish you could have done better at that time.
Goes back to communication again.
Yeah. And maybe a little bit of overconfidence and an ego that one shouldn't have had.
But it's the age to have it. And the age not to have it is now. So, where I am. So, anyone you have admired and looked up to in your life? I mean, many people, I'm sure, but someone that really stands out iconically for you, as you do for many of us?
Yeah, that's an easy one to answer. There are 2 or 3 people that have inspired me tremendously. One, of course, was my predecessor, J.R.D. Tata, who left his mark very firmly on the industrial community in India, and was a tremendous mentor to me in the years we worked together. But 2 in the United States who I looked up to and became very close to. One was Mr. Schott, who was the chairman of Cummins, and Ravi knows him well, who continues to be a particular personal friend and mentor even today. And the other was Amar Bose, who formed the Bose Corporation. And he and I really became very close, not publicly friendly. We shared a lot of things together. We spent many hours together exchanging ideas, and these three gentlemen have had a profound influence on the way I think, or the manner in which I look at the world around me.
So one question that on my personal journey, I feel I'm exploring this question more and more, so I'll ask you. You know, without planning or without any concentrated effort, I think we have about, I have to count correctly, but 6 or 7 women co-founders who are just spectacular. I am inspired by them every time, by their energy, by their forcefulness to take life to where they want to take it. And, it's very different from when I began my journey at 16 as an engineering student, unwanted on campus, or so I felt at least, and then going on to primarily working in a male-dominated world. But, so I've been reflecting on this a lot, which I didn't in my younger years, on how do we create more leaders? Is there really a gender divide? Is there not? And maybe it's an unfair question to ask you, but to serve the constituency that I do want to serve, I would ask you to say, is there, from all the years of observation you have, more that can be done to inspire women, to create women leadership? And let's put that in the context of just India, so we at least filter the problem. Any thoughts you would offer on that?
No, in many ways, you look at India and you say politically, women have reached the top faster than, and it's been more so than it might be in other countries. And the boardroom and enterprise-wise, there have been women that have stood out. But it's true, there are less of them than you would expect. And they're very rational, and when they're in those positions, they aren't lacking anything in terms of leadership. So there's no reason why it shouldn't happen, and I think we just will see more and more of women leaders in companies as we go forward.
I want to take a moment and really thank you for on behalf of all the entrepreneurs for the last, I think, 2 years, where you have been deeply engaged with the startup ecosystem and the personal support you have given to Kalari portfolio companies, and now to K-Start initiatives. And perhaps you know, and perhaps you don't, on the degree of impact and courage it gives to me, gives to many others when we feel that little bit of support. And I want to thank you personally for that support and encouragement.
Thank you, Vani. And I need to say the experience that I've had in working with you and some of the companies that you have helped float and start and grow has been a very important part of my learning process in this. And I value the interaction. I value the innovativeness that accompanies many of the companies that we have worked with. And it's one way to bring me closer to 26 again, in many ways. But it's really been an invigorating experience and a wonderful means of transitioning from working in older traditional companies, having retired and having the pleasure and the fun of working with innovative young people. So it's great, and thank you for giving me that opportunity.
You're very gracious, sir. Like I said, it's been our pleasure and privilege, but thank you very much.